Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mir Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Kuf Samach Ches Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the very bottom line of Kuf Samach Zayin Amud Beis, Siman Shin Chav Ches Sif Lamed Ches, continuing to discuss the halachas of refuah on Shabbos. Our learning today should be a schus. For Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasunim Batzaru Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bei Bayam, Bei Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem, V'yotziah Mitzara L'Rvacha, Me'afela L'Ora, U'mishibud L'Geula, Hashta Bagala V'zman Kariv, V'namar Amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema. For Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malkachana, Gila Shifra Bas Ilana Udel, Rivka Bas Shiraleah, Chavadasa Bas Serel, Yitzchak Ben Tzion Ben Dusha. They should have a refuah shalema b'say shar chole Yisrael, and we are mispal that b'schus the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbe Shem should watch over Gans Klal Yisrael b'chol makom shahem. Says the Mechaber Sif Lamed Ches, bottom line, Kuf Samach Zayin Amud Beis. Mutter le'echol srafim misukim. Not 100% sure what srafim misukim are. Literally, the words would mean sweet, sharp, or hot things. Veligmaya beitza chaya, to swallow a raw egg. Kedei lahanhim hakoil, in order to make one's voice sweet. So I'm trying to remember what they called this back in the day. A goggle muggle. This is what the chazanim used to drink down. I think they had a raw egg. They would put some schnapps into it. Maybe that's the srafim misukim. Maybe some honey. And this would be something that they would drink in order to somehow ease the throat, maybe do something for the vocal cords, and it would be something that would help them have a sweet voice. Says the Mechaber, you're allowed to drink this down on Shabbos, and it is not an issue of refuah on Shabbos. It's not something that would be aser gzeira mishum shchikas samonim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kanukov Chav Beis mutter le'echel. It would be mutter to drink this. Dalav le'refuahu. This is not considered something which is refuah. The ligzar b'zeh mishum shchikas samonim, so that we should apply the gzeira of shchikas samonim. In other words, just because it has some kind of a beneficial effect, that doesn't mean that right away we're going to categorize it as refuah. I mean, there's a lot of things that you eat and that you drink that you enjoy. They taste good, right? So is that, we're going to call that therapeutic? It's not therapeutic. Somehow this is something that coats the throat or whatever it is, and somehow it improves the voice. That doesn't fall under the rubric of refuah. Moving along to Sef Lamed Tes, says the Mechaber, Ein oisin apiktoisin. You're not allowed to make an apiktoisin. What is apiktoisin? It's what we call in English an emetic. The parentheses, it says over here, Pirush Aruch. The Aruch defines this as a nutrican. The word apiktoisin is a contraction of the words apik tvei zoin. It is something which causes an excess of food to become expelled. Keloimar, which means to say, lahoitzi oidef hamazoin. When you have an excess of food and you wish to bring it up, you would take an emetic. It's something that makes a person be sick. And this is something that the Bali Taiva used to do back in the day when somebody had an amazing feast and he wanted to be able to taste everything and indulge in every type of food. And they would go and eat too much, and they wanted to eat more. So they would take an emetic that would make them be sick, so that now they could start their Suda all over again, which is also for several reasons. But on Shabbos, you're not allowed to make this apiktoisin. And the Mechaber continues on the second line, Dahainu gramas ki. It's something which causes one to vomit. You're not allowed to do this, afilu b'chayil. Even during the week, you're not allowed to do this. And the Mechaber says you can't do it during the week. Mishum hefsid achlim. Because all this is bringing food to waste. The same way you're not allowed to go to the refrigerator and take out food and just wantonly destroy it, you're also not allowed to eat the food and then take an emetic, which is going to make you vomit it up for the same reason. It's just hefsid achlim. It's just ruining perfectly good food. However, the Mechaber says, but if somebody overindulged and now he has indigestion, because of it, and he's suffering, so then b'choil mutter afilu b'sam. Then during the week, this is perfectly mutter, and you could use a medication, an emetic preparation, which would be a medication. Certainly, you're allowed to use it during the week. Or b'Shabbos aser b'sam, but on Shabbos it would be aser to use a medication for this. And obviously, we're talking about somebody who's not even considered to be a chayli she'ein by sakana, chayli kalaguf, kayev leituva. We're talking about somebody who has a mild indigestion from overindulging. We're not going to be matter him to use a medication, and the problem over there obviously is the gzeira of shchikas samanim. So on Shabbos it would be aser, umutter biyad, but it would be mutter for one to cause himself to be sick using his finger. And obviously the way that's done is somebody would put his fingers down his throat and activate the body's gag reflex, and that would cause him to go vomit up his food. So the Mechaber is telling you, if somebody is just to the point that he's mitztayr, he's not feeling well because of overindulgence, and he's got to get that food out of him, he would be allowed to do it on Shabbos biyad. He would be allowed to use his fingers in order to do this. Now, this is a little bit difficult to understand, because what exactly is the heter over here? You're not allowed to use a sam on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you wouldn't be allowed to use an emetic. Why can't you use an emetic? Gzeira mishum shchikas samanim. Now, normally, if something is aser because of gzeira mishum shchikas samanim, not only are you not allowed to do it with the medication, you're also not allowed to do it biyad. Because if we're going to allow you to make yourself sick using your fingers, well, then you might come to do it with a pill. And to do it with a pill is aser mishum shchikas samanim. So why exactly is it mutter over here? Needs some biur. So there's a famous Eglei Tal. Eglei Tal is an unbelievable sefer on Hilchos Shabbos and Masechta Shabbos. And the Eglei Tal basically says that really causing oneself to be sick, and even the use of an emetic preparation on Shabbos, is not really considered refuah. Because if you think about it, you're not curing an illness, you're not curing an ailment. A person overindulged. There's simply too great a volume of food. There's excess food in the system. The system can't handle that much food. So you're removing the excess amount of food that is causing you discomfort. But that's not a cure. You're not healing anything. You're not sick. There's no ailment here that you're curing. So the Eglei Tal suggests that this is not really an act of refuah gamor. And since it's not really an act of refuah gamor, the whole iser shchikas samanim is a little bit specious. So to use a sam, we're taka going to asa mishum shchikas samanim, because you are using a preparation that has some kind of a therapeutic effect, and we have to be geyser that if you're going to want to use it and you don't have it, you might go ahead and make it. So that would be shchikas samanim. But if you're doing it biyad, so right away, you're a little bit removed from shchikas samanim, right? You are more removed from shchikas samanim, and also, it's not really a refuah gamor. It's not really an act of refuah. Eglei Tal suggests that that's why this would be mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois katan kuf chaf gimel. Ein oisin. You're not allowed to make this apik tuzin. Tahainu kadesha tihei roiv v'yachsar achakach lechel harbe. The reason people did this, there was a fancy word for it back in Rome. Regurgitorium. People would go ahead, this was a minig. They would go to have a feast at the regurgitorium, and they would go ahead and they would overeat, and this was the expectation. You go to the shmorg, and you eat the first 10 dishes at the shmorg, and then you excuse yourself, and you make yourself sick, so you can start eating all over again, and then you go take the next 10 dishes, and this was a minig. This was the way that they did things. So you're not allowed to do this. They did this to make themselves hungry, to make themselves more room in their system, so that they should be able to go ahead and eat again. You're not allowed to do this. On Shabbos, also B'Sam, you're not allowed to do this with a medicated preparation. The Dami L'Refuah. And it's interesting that the Mishnah Berurah himself, he uses the word over here, Dami L'Refuah, which for some reason, I didn't catch this before. And he's bringing this down. If you take a look at the Yos Katan Tzadik Beis in the Shar HaTzion, this is the lashon of Rashi, actually. The Dami L'Refuah. It's not Refuah, right? The Mishnah Berurah could have said, Asr B'Sam, Mishum Shchikas Samanim. He doesn't say that. He said it's dummy l'refuah. it is similar to refuah. Ugzeirim mishum shchikas samamonim. Now, there is no Mishnah Berurah on the words umuter biyad, but that would play right into what we said from the Eglei Tal. Remember that this is only also if you use a sam, because it's dami l'refuah. Therefore, if you're doing it biyad, where really the whole gzeira of shchikas samanim doesn't pass as much, and it's not really refuah gamor, it's only dami l'refuah, therefore it would be muter. Moving along, 3 lines down, Kuf Samaches Amud Aleph, Sif Mem. Says the Mechaber, HaChoshesh b'meyov, if somebody has some kind of intestinal distress, muter litein aleim kais she'eru mimenu chamin. You're allowed to do what is called cupping, which you take a glass, you fill it with hot water so that the glass gets good and hot, then you pour out the hot water, and then you take the cup, and they would put the cup over the navel, over the belly button. And the heat inside the cup, somehow that would create some sort of a vacuum, and it would create some kind of a suction. And the way the Mishnah Berurah explains it is that somehow this was known to have a therapeutic effect of moving the intestines back into place. We don't understand exactly what this is. Certainly current medical science doesn't seem to recognize this as anything, which doesn't mean anything, because current medical science is full of mistakes, so it doesn't mean anything. But we just don't recognize this as a cure. But back in the day, cupping was certainly a thing, and that's why the Mechaber discusses it. So he says, you would be allowed to do this cupping, even though the interior of the cup is still hot. You got the cup all heated from the hot water, you poured out the hot water. When you put it over the navel, the inside of the cup is still hot. This is something which is mutter on Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kan Kov Chaf Hey, Liten Alem Kais. Tahainu. What exactly was this procedure? Shekoifeu al hatabur. They would invert the cup and place it over the navel, and they would do this l'misha chosh b'meyav, to somebody who was suffering from intestinal distress. Va'oiches hakais es habasar. Then the cup would kind of grab hold of the flesh because of a vacuum situation. And it would move the intestines. It would draw the intestines towards the cup, towards the surface of the body, and move everything back into place. He's quoting Rashi. Now, Rashi's a Rishon. I heard from Klozberger Rebbe many years ago that every word that a Rishon wrote was written by Ashpas HaKomus, which means that they would say a shame, and through kaiches that we don't understand, Kabbalistic things, it would make the pen move. Now that doesn't mean that all of the words of the Rishonim were written with, heebie-jeebies. It means that they put in every ounce of amelus, every ounce of labor and work into understanding the Torah and into ferreting out the emes la'amitoi of the Torah. And they knew what they wanted to write. But they also knew that the writing that they were going to put down was going to have an effect on Klal Yisrael l'doirei doros. That Rashi was sitting down, Rashi was writing Rashi on Gemara, on Chumash. He knew that it's going to have an effect l'doirei doros. So he wanted to invoke not only the results of his personal amelus, but he wanted to invoke whatever koiches he could min hashamayim as well. So they would have in mind a shame, a name of Hashem, and that would make the pen move at the same time. So it was Rashi writing together with help, min hashamayim, so to speak. So there's no word of Rashi sheyesh by doifi. There's no words of Rashi that are just there. He didn't know what he was talking about. No, there is something here. Even if we don't recognize it, we don't understand it, but there was something here. So too, somebody who is suffering from intestinal distress could take a garment or some cloth that he heated up, and he could lay it on his stomach to put something nice and warm on the stomach to ease the distress. This is something that was brought down in the Ramah back in Siman Shin Chavav, or pieces, shards of earthenware that have been warmed up, or bricks that were warmed up. So you're allowed to take something warm and put it onto the body, and this is not a Shabbos concern. It seems to me that this is not also because of shchikas samonim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kuf Chavav, Alpha P, you're allowed to do this even though the cup is still warm. Humiloshan HaTorah, this is taken straight out of the Torah. The reason that the Mechaber puts this in, and he says you're allowed to do this even though the cup is still hot, the Kavanasai Delainema Kamai the Asra Lurchaitz Pechamin, Kamai Kain Kalchamim, also Legufai, Lefika Hashmi Inan the Mutter. There was a concern here. We know that there's Xera that you're not allowed to wash yourself, Rechitza with hot water, is usher because of the gzeira you might come to heat up water on Shabbos. You might think that any time you apply something that's hot to the body, maybe that's something that's usher on Shabbos. So the same way it's usher to wash with hot water on Shabbos, maybe it's also usher to apply hot begadim to your body on Shabbos. Kamash Malon, that it is not usher. Okay, the Isa Bebraisa Shabbos Memo and Beis, Mechamad Maluntis, a person could warm up a towel, Omaniach al B'nei Me'av, and lay it on his stomach b'Shabbos. Ve'etikoy HaTorah v'haramal le'el b'siman shel chavav sif vav b'haga. Now, we're going to discuss this topic of cupping in tomorrow's share as well in Sif Mem Gimel, and over there we'll discuss a little bit more precisely why it's mutter to do this, and there is no gzeira shchikas samonim. We learned earlier as well that you're not allowed to take a keli full of hot water and put it onto your body if it's an open keli. And that was also not because of Shabbos, it was also because of sakana. You take scalding hot water in a keli and you lay it on your body, and then somebody bumps into you and it spills, you'll chas v'chalila burn yourself. So that's something that's also mishum sakana. But to take, let's say, a hot water bottle that seals up very well, that would not be usher. There wouldn't be any issue of sakana. Then the only question would be, it doesn't look like you're doing something for refuah. So at least I know in my house, my mother's used to use a hot water bottle almost every day of the winter. It's definitely not muchacha milsa that the refuah covered. Just she wanted to be warm. So she did it to warm herself up. In that case, it wouldn't be usher because of shchikas samonim. Moving along to Sif Mem Aleph, says the Mechaber, Mi shenishtaker, if somebody nebach is drunk, I feel like saying loy aleinu, Rabbi Isai. There's no understandable heter of any kind for people to go ahead and get drunk. And I don't care if it's by a kiddush, I don't care if it's by a sudas mitzvah, I don't care if it's by tayameha. It is completely antithetical to Yiddishkeit, to Torah Yiddishkeit, for a person to go ahead and get himself drunk. Even on Purim, if I may say so, even on Purim, people who go ahead and become drunk like skunks. It's not oisgehalten, Rabbi say. It's not a Yiddish azach. People who go on Purim totally l'shem shamayim, and they drink enough to fulfill ad lo yada, exactly what ad lo yada means. And when they get drunk, it's when they do take yayin, nichnas yayin yotza soid. It brings them to a higher madrega because it brings out the ruchnius that's inside of them. That's one thing, but some of the things that I've witnessed on Purim, I'm sorry, but it's more reminiscent of an Eina Yehudi in law school than it is of a person on a high madrega who's doing something that supposedly should be considered a mitzvah. But in any case, now that I've finished my rant, Misha Nishtaker, somebody who got drunk. Sherifuasai, back in the day, it was known to be therapeutic. Lasach kapis yadav v'raglav, to anoint the palm of the hands and of the feet. B'shemen v'melach, with a combination of oil and salt. Mutter l'seicham b'Shabbos, you would be allowed to apply this on Shabbos. Now, in no way is the Mechaber condoning the idea of getting drunk on Shabbos. This is post facto. Somebody went ahead and he went to the Kiddush and he indulged too much, and now he's drunk, and you want to know how to get him out of his drunken stupor. So, okay, they would have this refuah of oil and salt on the hands and the feet. Says the Mechaber Mutter L'Sucham B'Shabbos, you would be allowed to do this on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan, Kuf Chaf Zayin, Losach. Why is this mutter? The Masha befakech shechrusay mimenu ein ze refuah. He brings down from the Taz and the Eliyah Rabbah that again, drunkenness is not an illness. A hangover is not an illness. It's not an ailment. It's not that your body is malfunctioning. It's that you indulge too much in a toxin. And the alcohol's got to get worked out of your system. But it's not considered an ailment. And therefore, doing this is not considered an act of refuah. V'ainu ba'achrayim she'eskimu, take a look at the achrayim who agree to mutter lish'oif tabak b'nechirav. In case you're wondering, when somebody comes to you in shul and offers you a shmek tabak, says the Mishnah Berurah in the name of the achrayim, you're allowed to take a shmek tabak. You're allowed to take a sniff of snuff on Shabbos. Whether you're doing this because it has the effect of clearing the head. It's like when you take a sniff of that, that ammonia stuff, but somebody's head is a little stuffy, and you take a little, sniff of the tabak, and somehow it opens you up a little. Or you're doing it because you drank too much. It's okay, it's mutter to take a shmek tabak at Shabbos. Why? Because the bottom line is that people are in the habit of using the tabak if they don't have a headache, and if they're not drunk. It's something enjoyable. They like the smell. It's a nice aroma. Makes them feel good. It gives a little pleasant tickle to the nose. So people are used to using a shmek tabak for reasons that are not therapeutic at all, just for enjoyment. So then do the math. When you see somebody in shul taking a shmek tabak, you don't look at him and say, oh, he's doing an act of refuah. No, he's not doing an act of refuah. He's doing something that people do for enjoyment all the time. It's not milsa for refuah. There's no reason that it should be aser. Moving along to Iskat and Kuf Chav Ches, and the Mechaber said that you're allowed to apply the oil and the salt to the hands and to the feet. Says the Mishnah Berurah, B'Shemen v'Melach, it means a combination of the two, Mu'uravin Yachad. You're mixing the oil and the salt together. Moving along to Sif Mem Beis, 3 lines off the bottom end of the line. Says the Mechaber, Ein Misamlin. You're not allowed to exert yourself. Misamlin, the shirish of the word misamlin is amel. Adam la'amal yulad. Person was born to work, Rabbi say. What does that mean? Ma'amar Chazal. Adam la'amal yulad. The Rebbeinu Shalom didn't put you on this world to twiddle your thumbs and sit around and do nothing. Or to, just sit around with your feet up, read a book. That's not what the Rebbeinu Shalom put you on this world for. The Rebbeinu Shalom put you on this world to be productive. He gave you time. He gave you koyach, he gave you abilities, he gave you capabilities, and the expectation is that you're supposed to use them, and you're supposed to be productive. That's Adam la'amal yula. That's the shirish of the word misamlin. What does it mean in our context? It means exercise to a certain extent. Ein misamlin. You're not allowed to go ahead and work yourself and do exercise. Hainu, this means shedoires al haguf b'koyach. Now, literally, those words mean shedoires al haguf, that you stamp or stomp on the body with strength. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that that's not what it means. It doesn't mean that you have somebody stomp on your body. What it means is that you bang yourself. This is some kind of like calisthenics, like people are doing exercise and they're, going like this and like that, whatever it is. But they're doing exercise. And why are they doing it, says the Mechaber? Kedei sheyiga v'yazeh. To work themselves, to wear themselves out, to work up a good sweat, to exert themselves. Somebody who gets in a good workout session, when he finishes the workout session, he's tired. When he finishes, he might feel pumped a little bit from the exercise, but he's like, oh, that was a good workout. And he's all sweaty, worked up a sweat. That's exactly what the Mechaber says. Ein misamlin hainu shadoros ala guf b'koyach, with strength, kidei sheyiga, to work out the aziyah and get sweated up. You're not allowed to do this on Shabbos. Okay, let's take a look at what the Mishnah Berurah says, and then we could parse it a little bit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kan Kuf Chavtes, Ritzayin Loymar, what he means over here when he says that you're being doires ala guf b'koyach, what he means to say is shepushtin umekaplin zroisein, they would stretch and then bend their arms in front of them and then behind them. I lost the place. Umischamimin, and they would get themselves heated up. Umazian, and they would work up a sweat. He takes this from the Rabbeinu Chananel, and they're doing this Kadesha Yiga V'Yazia. They're doing it for a workout and to work up a sweat. Says the Mishnah Berurah V'Hibachal Refuah. This is something that was considered Refuah. They were doing it for therapeutic reasons. And therefore it was also because it's an act of Refuah, and it's also Mishum Shchikas Samanim. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, Ve'ein lahakshos. You can't ask. In other words, you would be tempted to ask a kasha on this. Ve'ein lahakshos. You cannot ask. Kevan she'ein kan shayches shchikas samamonim. What shayches to shchikas samamonim is there here? You're not using any kind of a medicated preparation. You're not taking a pill. You're not taking an oral medication that we will be afraid that, if you don't have it on Shabbos, you're going to go make it. Shchikas samamonim. This has nothing to do with any kind of pill or any kind of medication. You're working out. So what shayches to shchikas samamonim is there? Says the Mishnah Berurah, you would think hayu lanu lahatir kamay b'sif sha'achazeh. We're going to see in Sif Mem Gimel, which is going to bring us back to cupping, that when you're doing something for therapeutic purposes and it has no shayches to shchikas samamonim, there is no gzeira of shchikas samamonim. So while there by exercise, is there an issur of shchikas samamonim? Says the Mishnah Berurah Yesh Larma, you could say, the kevin shel pa'amim mevian azeya ala chayla gamkein al yedei samamonim. Over here you're doing the exercise, and one of the points of the exercise, said the Mechaber, was to work up a sweat. They had some kind of a medication that they would give to an ill person when they held that it was good for the ill person to work up a sweat. They had a pill. Imagine, an exercise pill. Instead of going to the gym and working out, they would give him a pill, and the pill would have the effect of making him work up a sweat. So now do the math. You're doing something manually. You're going in and doing manual exercise to work up a sweat. And you're right, that is no shayches to shchikas samamonim. But there's also an exercise pill. So sometimes if somebody doesn't want to work out to work up a sweat, they would give him a pill to work up a sweat. So there is a connection to shchikas samamonim. Therefore, we don't let you do the exercise to work up a sweat because we're afraid you might come to take the pill to work up a sweat. And that's also Mishum Shchikas Samamonim. This is in contrast to Sif Mem Gimel. She'ein shayches refuah loisan advarim al yedei shchikas samamonim klal. In Sif Mem Gimel, we're going to be talking about acts of refuah that do not use a medication, and there is no medication that does the same thing. So over there, there's no connection to shchikas samamonim, and therefore the gzera would not apply. V'dan, you should know, says the Mishnah Berurah, based on what we learned earlier in this Siman, in Sif Yud Zayin, we paskin again like the Shitas Ramban back in Sif Yud Zayin, that when you have somebody who's a chaylu she'ein by sakana, even if he's a chayli kol haguf, a Yisrael is not allowed to do an Issur D'Rabbanan for him unless he does the Issur D'Rabbanan with a shinui. Hachinami b'inyanenu. Over here, the same halacha would apply. Even if you have a person who's a chaylu she'ein by sakana, and you want to make him sweat, you would only be allowed to give him the medication or to help him exercise or something. You would have to do it with a shinoi. Certainly, if he's not a chayla, he's a healthy person, and he's working out because he's worried about his health, that's certainly usher. You're not allowed to do it even with a shinoi. Now, how does this play in to exercise? So the truth is that there are some interesting Dirshu footnotes over here. It's been a while, really, since we did some Dirshu footnotes. But we have some Dirshu footnotes over here that I think are kedai to see. So if you take a look at Dirshu footnote number 115, misha sach gufay, as far as one who puts massage oil on his body, and then he gets like a massage. Kasav le'el, we already learned in Shin Chav Zayin Zayin, she'asa mishamuvdin d'chayil, to get a real massage workout, b'koyach, a real massage, that's also on Shabbos. Why? There's no malacha involved, and the oil is not a problem. It's not viscous. There's no problem mimachik or mimareach. So what's the problem? The problem is uvdin d'chayil. That's weekday activity. It's inappropriate for Shabbos. U'l'shitas Rambam mutar lasis kein kol she'ein mechaven lahavi is atzmai l'deizeya. The Rambam would hold that it would be mutar unless your kavana is to work up a sweat. Okay, l'kvaya atzmai l'hisame l'tzarech refuah oishipar abrius. But if you're going to get a massage for therapeutic reasons, also that would be also. How about using exercise equipment on Shabbos? So you've got the rack with the weights and everything else, and it's Shabbos afternoon, and you feel like doing a workout on your exercise equipment. And it definitely feels like uvdin d'chayil, Rabbi say. You're going to go put on your sweats and go into your room and start doing presses and everything else. Is that Shabbos, Rabbi say? That's not Shabbos. So that would be also, says Rabbi Karelitz, because of uvdin d'chayil. An interesting halacha. No, wait, I skipped a little. Now, let's say you're not doing this for a workout. You just enjoy it. Took me a while to realize what this word is. Physiotherapy. Somebody does physical therapy. If you're just doing it for enjoyment. But as far as jogging, where we said, the Mishnah Berurah said, that would be asur on Shabbos because of uvdin d'chayil. Here's the interesting, I found these 3 lines interesting. V'targilei neshima, breathing exercises. Hamiyuadim lechazek es shrirei adibur, breathing exercises that are used as part of speech therapy. Definitely, there are a lot of breathing exercises that are good for speech therapy. People who get hoarse all the time. My grandfather, Olav Shalom, was a highly sought after speech therapist. Highly sought after speech therapist. And he did speech therapy with chazanim, but he had a steady stream of patients who were rabbeim, who gave shir every day, who taught classes every day. And 2 months into the school year, I couldn't talk. They were hoarse. And he would teach them how to use their vocal cords properly. If you remember, those longtime listeners of mine, my voice used to go down. Every now and then, there would be several days where I couldn't say shir. Baruch Hashem, we figured out what the problem was. It actually wasn't a speech problem. It was a different problem, which Baruch Hashem was resolved. But if you use your vocal cords properly, and you use your speech properly, and you use proper breathing techniques, you could say shir, and you could say an up-tempo shir, which is my style, and you could do it day after day after day after day, and pretty much you won't have a problem. Of course, you can get an upper respiratory issue going on, and that could make you hoarse. But as far as straining your voice, if you use your breath properly and you use your vocal cords properly, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be a problem. So if somebody has breathing exercises that he uses for speech, this would not present a refuah issue. There would be no gzeira of shrikas samanim, and it also would not be asur because of uvdin d'chayil, like we've seen by some other exercises. Going along to footnote 116. Ulatayil b'Shabbos. How about to go out for a good walk on Shabbos? Kasav le'el, shamotar afilu im kavanase lehisame lehischamem l'tzarchei refuah. We learned earlier in the Mishnah Berurah that it's mutter to go for a walk on Shabbos, even if you're doing it for exercise purposes. It's healthy to walk a half hour every day, so you're going out to get your daily walk. That is mutter on Shabbos. Because people go out for a pleasant walk on Shabbos afternoon. So when somebody sees you going for a walk, they don't know that you're doing it for refuah. Now, if you go with your water bottle and and you're doing the power walk, then people look at you and it's muchach that you're doing it for refuah. So then it could be a problem. But you're going out for a walk on Shabbos and you're wearing your suit and tie, and you go for a nice walk. It's not mucha that what you're doing is for refuah. But the Mishnah Berurah did say there are those that are machmir. But to jog, when you see somebody out jogging, you know why they're doing it. They're not doing it just for pleasure. They're doing it for healthy exercise. Okay. Let's go a little bit weiter here. We're still in Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Kof Lamed, a little less than halfway through the words of the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Veda, and you should know. Oh, yeah, we did this. Okay. A little further down. When you're dealing with like a lightweight massage, or rubbing, shifshav is rubbing the body down, that they do for people who are tired and worn out, and somehow this gives them a lift, and takes away their tiredness. Mistapik b'shilti gibarim im davar zeh doimel l'refuah, shilti gibarim is mesupik, and is it like an act of refuah of a aser? Aloi. Ach, if you match a custom of Magen Avram, if cut mem gimel dafila bari gamer, b'leis shem refuah gidel chazik bizkay aser, gam bazei and lahakol. We had the Magen Avram that we discussed. It's a little bit of an ambiguous Magen Avram, where the Magen Avram says that even for a perfectly healthy person, if he's doing an act which is a refuah act, and he's doing it to like improve his constitution, it's also in that case this kind of massage, which Mishnah Berurah says also would be usher. Let's finish Sif Membeis in the Mechaber. 2 lines off the bottom near the end of the line says the Mechaber. Va'aser litchaik kreisoi shel tinoik. You're not allowed to compress the stomach of a child kedei lahoitzi hari'i, to help him defecate. So you have a child who is not constipated, but he's trying to go and he's straining, and you want to help him. So, you take the legs and you push them up. You take the stomach and you compress the stomach a little, the intestines, the large intestines, in order to help him defecate. Says the Mechaber, not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he's cut Kuf Lamed Aleph, also Litchaik, Shema Yava Lahashkes Lois HaMemanim HaMashal Shalom. Why is this usher? Because this falls under the rubric of something that you do physically that has no shaykhis to shchikas samamanim, right? If I'm using my hands on the child's body, what connection is there to shchikas samamanim? But there is a connection to shchikas samamanim. You know what that is? It's like what we learned earlier in the shir. It's something that could be done 2 ways. It's like the exercise that we were discussing. Sometimes you tell the chayla to heat himself up by doing a workout. Sometimes you give him a pill. So too over here, there's 2 ways to help the child defecate. You could use the manual manipulation on his body. That has no connection to shchikas samamanim. But there's also a medicine you could give him. You can give him a laxative. Once you're giving him a laxative, now you're coming up against the problem with shchikas samamanim. So therefore, we're not going to allow you to do it the manual way, because you might come to the shchikas samamanim. Now, of course, if we're dealing with a situation where the child is suffering and the child is in pain, well, then we learned earlier that a katan always has the din of a chayla, at least a chayla shei by sakana. So certainly if the child is suffering, the child is really constipated, you could use a suppository, you could use a laxative, you could do whatever it is that you need to do. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's Refuas, Parnaset, Shidduchim, Tolol, Zenid. We should be zeicher to see the BS Girl Tzedek, B'meherav Yameinu, Amen. Be well.